Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we are putting together a look for District 5, which is Power and Technology, and we're going to talk about Ed Gein. Yay! Edward Theodore Gein was born on August 27, 1906 in La Crosse County, Wisconsin. He was also known as the Butcher of Plainfield or the Plainfield Ghoul. He died at Mendota Mental Health Institute of Respiratory Failure on July 26, 1984, at the age of 77. He is buried next to his family in the Plainfield Cemetery in a now unmarked grave. His mother, Augusta, hated his dad, an alcoholic who couldn't keep a job. From what I've read, she fully despised this man. Like, she wanted him dead. Anyway, Gein left the family farm only to attend school. They were not allowed to make friends. He was punished if he tried to make friends. They were not allowed to participate in any after-school activities. They were to go to school and come straight home. Augusta preached to her boys about the innate immorality, I cannot speak English today, apparently, of the world. The evils of drinking, and that all women, excluding herself, of course, because, she was perfect, were naturally promiscuous and instruments of the devil. Gein was punished if he tried to make friends, but he did well in school, particularly in reading, which is very interesting because later they tested his IQ and he did not test high. So I don't know, there was no further, investigation into that I could find. So I don't know if maybe, he had a head injury later in life that maybe, damaged his brain or what. But yeah, it says that when they tested his IQ, after he was arrested and convicted, that he did not test very high. So that was interesting to me. On April 1st, 1940, Ed Gein's father, George, died of heart failure caused by his alcoholism at the age of 66. Now, this is interesting to me because some sources, I say, found he died because of the heart failure. Some say he died because of the alcoholism. Some say that the alcoholism was a contributing factor to the heart failure that killed him. So, Henry worried about Ed's attachment to their mother and would often talk ill. Henry's his older brother. Would often talk ill about Augusta, which upset Ed and would often make him and Henry argue. I mean, they fought anyway, but more so when he talked bad about their mom because Ed had an unhealthy attachment to his mother. It's one of those relationships that makes you go, you know? Yeah, Hold on one second here. On May 16th, 1944, Ed and Henry were putting together a brush fire to take care of the brush that they were clearing away. It got out of control, and by the end of the day, Ed reported Henry missing. Now, there's a lot of speculation about what happened to Henry now, but back then, they were more inclined to just believe that it was an accident because that was better than having to do the investigation and paperwork of a serial killer. So it is what it is. But there's just a lot that I think now, looking back at it, that they are like, oh, it's really possible that this was in fact done by Ed Gein himself. And sorry, I got that in my mouth once and I don't want to do it again. So, a search party found his dead body, Henry's, and it was apparent he had been dead for some time. Cause of death was heart failure. They didn't see any, like, salacious injuries or any nefarious injuries that would make them think foul play right off the bat. But it was later reported that Henry had bruises on his head. The police dismissed the possibility of foul play, and the county coroner later officially listed asphyxiation as the cause of death. So this is important that I included both theories here, because originally it was said that Henry had heart failure and that was what killed him. Like, maybe he got freaked out because the fire got out of control and his heart just gave out. But there's other reports that say he died of asphyxiation, which, you know, could mean strangulation, or it could mean that he inhaled too much smoke. But I never found anything. I couldn't find anything that was like any further investigation into any of that, which, you know, rude. I'm sorry, it's not funny. But it is funny because, like, this is such an old case. Stop it. That, like, it's hard to say for sure what really happened, because apparently their record keeping was not ideal in the 1900s. George W. Ant wrote that in retrospect it was possible and likely that Henry's death was the Cain and Abel aspect of this case. Hold on, my cats are fighting. Sorry to put that on hold, but when they fight, they get violent, and it's just, I don't know, my Siamese does not like our boy cat at all. And he's likes to pick fights. So, anyway, where was I? So they think that maybe Henry said something during that brush fire that about their mother that finally pushed Ed too far, and he was like, no. And that Ed did something ultimately to kill Henry, which, I mean, is totes possible. But, like, that's so hard for me to sit here and be like, yeah, Ed definitely did it. Because, like I said, they didn't make very good recording of things back then. So you just don't have the information you need to make that assumption. So I don't want to, so I'm speculating, I guess you could say it's speculation. Augusta Gein died on December 29th, 1945 at the age of 67. This was not good for Ed. And they believe that this incident, and the fact that he was now completely alone in the world, is what spiraled him into this obsession with recreating his mother, bringing his mother back to life, if you will. I mean, if you think about it, he was just completely alone, and all he'd ever known was gone. His dad was dead, his brother was dead, his mom was dead. I mean, obviously you can say hindsight is 20/20. He obviously did not think through the fact that eventually his mother would die, and if he killed his brother, he would have no one. But I honestly just don't think that Ed really cared about his brother. And I have this theory where I wonder if Augusta didn't make Ed kill Henry because he had fallen in love with this girl in town. And so there's a part of me that's like, maybe Augusta put Ed up to the death of Henry because, you know, she was always telling them that women were whores, basically. I mean, it's entirely possible, wouldn't you say? It's totally possible. He kept the rooms his mother used pristine, which was very interesting when the time came for him to be investigated because the rest of the house was just disgusting, they said. Like, it was bad. He became interested in pulp magazines and adventure stories, especially those involving cannibals or Nazi atrocities, which I think is very interesting because People fail to mention in a lot of the videos I've seen about this that Ed Gein was active during World War II. So, on top of dealing with Nazi Germany and Hitler, we have this insane, like, grave robber who then goes a step further and kills 2 people, also active at this time. I feel like that's left out of, like, videos a lot. And, like, I feel like it's also very important, though. Because, I mean, he didn't really become active, like, you know, killing until the 1950s. But he was a part of the Nazi Germany reign. Although he lived in America. You understand what I mean. On November 16th, 1957, Bernice Worden disappeared. The evening before, Gein had been in the store and returned the next morning for a gallon of antifreeze. Bernice Worden worked at the local hardware store, and her sons were like, I think a police chief or a fire chief. Yeah, fire chief. And just don't go after law enforcement, guys. That's just not a good idea, clearly. But, yeah. And he had seen Ed Gein had been in the store and returned the next morning because, you know, he was there with his mom all the time. And he reported this to the police, and Gein was arrested at the grocery store in Plainfield, and the Muskowaka County police searched the farm. They found Warden's decapitated body in a shed on Gein's property, dressed out like a deer. So she was, like, hanging upside down by her ankles, and she had been sliced from, like, belly to, like, throat. And basically the blood was being drained out of her body. Which I was like, that's a lot, Ed. That's a lot. And kind of unnecessary. But what they found inside the house was even more interesting. Now, I left this to read just exactly as it was put out there. They found whole human bones and fragments, a wastebasket made of human skin covering several chair seats, skulls on his bedposts, female skulls, some with the top sawn off, bowls made from human skulls, a corset made from a female torso skin from shoulders to waist, leggings made from human leg skin, masks made from the skin of female heads, Mary Hogan's face mask in a paper bag, Mary Hogan's skull in a box, Bernice Warden's entire head in a burlap sack, Bernice Warden's heart in a plastic bag in front of Gein's potbelly stove, 9 vulvae in a shoebox, a young girl's dress, and the vulvas of 2 females judged to have been about 15 years old, a belt made from female human nipples, 4 noses, a pair of lips on a window shade drawstring, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face, and fingernails from female fingers. These artifacts were photographed at the state crime laboratory and then decently and respectfully disposed of. Gein admitted that between 1947 and 1952, he made as many as 40 nocturnal visits to 3 local graveyards to exhume bodies of middle-aged women who resembled his mother. He said he would wake up sometimes, like from this trance that he was in at these cemeteries, and he would leave empty-handed more than 30 times. I just don't understand how you just, like, walk up to a grave and are like, excuse me, are you using your body parts? Can I have them, please? That's, like, so messed up. Like, you're doing a lot here, bud. Doing a lot. He admitted to actually successfully stealing from, while in this trance, from 9 graves. 9 graves. Which is probably where the 9 vulvae come from. And it's like he wasn't even using it like, say, Jeffrey Dahmer was when he took these body parts from people. He was not intending to, like, eat them. He was trying to recreate the feel of his mother into a bodysuit, literally made of skin and shit, to feel like his mom was still with him. And I feel like this is the point where they realize, dude ain't out there. He's not out there. And I just, he killed 2 people. He killed 2 women, but was only convicted of and charged with the one because they had evidence, they said they had evidence that he had definitely killed Bernice Worden. But I'm like, y'all said you found Mary Hogan's head. I feel like that's ample evidence to say that he killed Mary Hogan. But apparently the Wasacaga, I can't pronounce this, Wasacaga County Police disagree because they did not charge him with the death of Mary Hogan. And it kills me that he also admitted to shooting her. She'd been missing for 3 years. He admits to shooting her, and they're just like, it's okay. Apparently we only care about the fire chief's son, mom. Like, whatever, bro. Whatever. It just disappoints me that even back then our justice system apparently sucked ass. Because how are you just going to overlook the fact that someone else is dead and be like, your life didn't matter, so we're not charging him with that? Like, if I get murdered, I'm sure, the true crime community would be like, we know who did it. We know who did it. But I would just be really hurt if someone was like, it doesn't matter. He was also a suspect in the 1953 disappearance of Evelyn Hartley, but they never did find any evidence to corroborate that. It was just a theory they had going at the time. He did not admit to that. So they had no confession and they had no evidence. Stormy, if you pee on this floor, I'm going to kick your butt. Sheriff Art Stanley assaulted Gein by banging his head into a table and a wall. And he died of heart failure at age 43 in 1968 before Gein's trial. His friends and family say that they feel that just the stress of the trial and having to confess and talk about what he had done to Gein while Gein was in custody was too much for him, and his heart just gave out. Honestly, back then, it seems like almost everyone in that era died of heart failure. So maybe just something was going on. I don't know. This might be like a conspiracy theory type thing, but like, we didn't have the greatest healthcare. We still don't have the greatest healthcare in the United States. So what if there was a little like something extra going on? Maybe.
The other is mother used pristine, which was very interesting when the time came for him to be investigated because the rest of the house was just disgusting, they said. Like, it was bad.
Give me 1 sec. I can't get this paper to sit still. But one of Art's closest friends said that he was a victim of Ed Gein as surely as if he had butchered him. And I don't know that I agree with that because, in all honesty, by his own admission, he states that if that he was worried about having to testify about the way that he treated him, and I feel like that just could have been avoided had he not been, an aggressive cop when he arrested him, and he had not hurt him. He could have avoided all of that. But back then, you weren't required, I think, to tape investigations, and you didn't have to provide proof that you didn't beat up the guy, and I don't know. I just don't know that I agree with the fact that he's another victim of Ed Gein's, because I feel like in a way that downplays the actual victims that he had, the women that he killed, and you can't really say that and then be like, oh, but we're not going to charge him for the death of Mary Hogan, because who cares about Mary Hogan? So I feel like you can't say that because it downplays the actual victims and the victim that you're refusing to prosecute him for. So, no. I'm sorry. I just disagree with that statement. On November 21st, 1957, Gein was diagnosed with schizophrenia and found mentally incompetent. This is interesting because some number of years later, they reopened his psychological evaluation, and he was found to be competent enough to assist in his own trial, which I find interesting because I don't know how you go from being schizophrenic to not being schizophrenic, or how you go from being not mentally competent to being mentally competent. Like, I don't know if the criteria changed and that's why they reopened that. Look, get off. And or what exactly it was, but then he was, like I said, he was found mentally competent enough to assist in his own trial, and he was committed to Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. Gein died at the hospital of lung cancer at the the psychiatric hospital of lung cancer on July 6, 1984, at the age of 77. Now, some interesting facts about Ed Gein is that he inspired a lot of movies. And I mean, a lot of movies. He is the inspiration for Psycho. He is the inspiration for Leatherface. He is also the inspiration behind the serial killer in American Horror Story's second season, Asylum. He is the inspiration for the character of Norman Bates and the Bates Motel. Except that with the Bates Motel, because it was such a popular show, they had to continue the story beyond the two women that he killed. So, of course, they added more crime into it because, hello, that's... The world loves three things: sex, drugs, and crime. I think we all know this to be a fact. We're normal people. It's okay. It's okay. But they obviously exaggerated his insanity for these movies because it's not as interesting as saying, oh, well, he didn't rob this grave tonight, or he didn't kill this person tonight because, you know, he's schizophrenic and whatever. No, it's... Get off the pit. It's more fun when there's actual crime. But I just found that very interesting, how many movies he was the inspiration for. Hollywood making their buku bucks, you know? I mean, you do you, Hollywood. You do you. But that's pretty much it for this segment on Ed Gein. There really wasn't a whole lot more I could have given you in the way of excitement or anything because, well, this is where we're at. So we'll just finish up this makeup look. I think Stormy's in heat. She's driving me nuts. My cat there. Both of them, actually. Okay, and this is the completed look for District 4, Power and Electricity. Or, sorry, District 5, Power and Electricity. Obviously, I went with the soft yellow gold to represent power and electricity.